Okay, I might have found a little gem here. You guys know I like to find some gems here and there, but it's been pretty scarce as of late. I've got to be honest, towards the end of the year, I've been a little bit worried about 2023 in the world of music, because there has been some great music and consistently actually lots of very good albums. But for me personally, I haven't come out of many albums absolutely loving them. And I have stumbled upon this one, and we're approaching, you know, the list season, you know, it's going to creep around, and it is going to come quick. And I don't want to get to the end of the year without finding these sneaky little gems that are actually really good and deserve attention from me on this channel, because I lose sleep at night over stuff like this. I'm not even lying to you. Joey Valence and Brae have come together here for one of the most fun and old school rap albums I've heard in honestly quite a long time. I've not heard an album in the hip hop world that is so like vehemently embraced the old school days of hip hop. Like seriously, just channeling that time and just going full front with it, just going, you know, no shits, no giggles, just going straight at it and delivering just an album that is totally on board with that era. And to be honest with you, that to me in theory could be a little off-putting, because I do think sometimes when the new rappers or newer artists kind of want to just be sounding like the old stuff, can be a little derivative, it can be a little samey, it can be a little stale, and I tend to not really warm that well to it. I tend to actually be quite negative towards it, or I'm middling towards it, and I'm just like, oh, they sound like this era. But I've got to say, there are always exceptions to the rules, guys, and Joey Valence and Brae here are an exception to that rule. Even stuff from this time that sounds like this, I think could arguably be a little dated. But what makes this album sound so fresh and sound so fun and unique for an album in 2023 is the fact that the modern production that just goes all in from start to end with the hard-hitting punky attitude, the spunky punky attitude, the fiery blasting beats just makes for such a good listen. And sometimes albums from that era sound a bit dated, they sound a bit dusty, they sound a bit, you know, unpolished, and to have an album from today doing that sound, I think is actually working in their favor a little bit, because you just feel the bangers banging in your ear. Punk Tactics immediately has the blistering energy that you could only really find from something like, you know, old school Beastie Boys. I mean, straight away, I think Joey is going to remind a lot of people of Beastie Boys. He absolutely channels their energy so much. But for me, I think, you know, the fire that comes through is more than enough to keep me entertained. I think the track Drop as well, which kind of ties in more modern production sounds, which I really like, you know, has the kind of like drum and bass, absolute insane drum and bass beat, just absolutely ripping this song apart. And then, of course, there's this really cool like beat switch. I have to mention this part because it's just so unexpected. You wouldn't think like this would need a beat switch, but it's like slowing down the drum and bass and then like turning it into some kind of like chopped and screwed drum and bass or something. I don't even know how to describe it, if that even makes sense in what I'm saying. But honestly, listen to it. It's really cool how they switch the beat and slow the drum and bass down so much that it sounds the way it does. I've got to say, it's not the first time on this album where you get some drum and bass either. It's not the last time, should I say, on this album where you get drum and bass, because Hooligang towards the end, oh wow, the siren in the beat is so good. Seriously, if you want to pick out just one banger from this album, play this track. If you've heard the They Hate Change album from last year, by the way, or have seen them live, because I've actually done both. I saw They Hate Change earlier this year live. They were really good. If you're into that kind of stuff, the drum and bass combination with hip hop, it's an unearthed gem, honestly. Like seriously, there is so much potential for these two sounds to come together. We need more like Joey Valence and Brae here and They Hate Change doing this stuff, because it works so well. So while yeah, they're pulling out of a lot of old school references and influences, they're really pushing the boundaries with some of their sounds with tracks like this. But of course you do get the obvious tracks like Watch Your Step, which is just classic 80s rap, honestly. You've got the Right Now track, which actually reminded me a little bit of Boogie Down Productions, actually, something like they would do back in the day. So, you know, they've got the references down to a T, but I'm just kind of enjoying the energy that they bring to the table on these tracks, like the punk attitude just living through this album is really fun. And while the hooks or some of the refrains are like super like standard, like they're saying some really obvious things, it is just kind of fun. I mean, Start a Fight, I mean, that hook, of course, is kind of ridiculously goofy, but it's that Prodigy type beat that they've came through with here. I mean, seriously, coming through with something that sounds like the Prodigy was so fun to hear as well. Was well on board with that. Actually reminds me of something Slow Tie maybe would do at some point, honestly, maybe, or maybe a track like Doorman, I guess. But even without the constant references that I'm throwing out here, these are just putting out some really fun bangers that I'm enjoying. I think this album speaks for itself, so I'm going to keep this quite a short and snappy review, to be honest with you. I will say towards the end of the album, some of the final tracks like Street Pizza is a little bit too silly even for my taste. And some of the lyrics on the last track, I was a bit like, I don't know why we're doing this, but honestly, the attitude, the fire, the energy, all the words I keep using is really infectious across this album. Like, seriously, I was just totally like engaged the minute this album came on. Punk Tactics starts, I'm well on board. And yeah, while they're not doing anything totally special, there are a few surprises here and there that actually do remind you of the fact that these guys might have some ideas that they can push even further going forward, because some of the best tracks are the ones that do that. But as a whole, I'm loving this, man. I just think this is a really short burst of adrenaline that I'm absolutely going to be on board with. It's super short, the album. It's super spunky and fiery. I don't really have many complaints. There's even a Logic feature on here, by the way, which I haven't even mentioned yet, but I've got to say, even the Logic feature I was pretty on board with, and I've not really cared for Logic for some time. So yeah, there you go. It gets the Logic approval, and it also gets the Not Real Music approval too. I'm going 8 out of 10. At the risk of this album kind of aging in a little bit of a slightly corny way, just with the fact that they are pulling from obvious eras of hip-hop here. At this moment, this year, I've got to say it's one of my most enjoyable albums of the year, one of the most fun albums I'm listening to this year. And yeah, I think at this time, I think an 8 out of 10 is totally justified, and I think it's a great time. So please check this out. I think there's definitely something to what they're doing here that I think people could really like. I think if you're an old school hip-hop head, you're going to be absolutely on board with this. And I even think newer rap fans too, younger rap fans, like someone maybe even my age or younger, would be on board with this too. So thank you for watching. Hopefully you agree with me on this one. Do check it out if you haven't already. Subscribe as well. Have a good day and goodbye.